What if the behaviors you thought were control were actually your nervous system trying to create safety? Welcome back to the Unfiltered Butterfly, the method behind the real transformation. I'm Mike Connor, the creator of Attracting Grace and the Magical Mind Process. This show is about what really changes lives. Not surface understanding, of course, but not motivation either. But the patterns that are underneath the identity, because when those shift, everything shifts. Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Nicole Grace. Nicole, welcome to our program.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nicole Grace, and as always, my mom is joining us, Sharla.
And I'm Sharla Lee, and it is a pleasure to be with you today.
Today, ladies, we are talking about safety. We are talking about nervous system safety. Not the kind you think about when you hear the word safe, like crossing a street on a bike or anything like that. We're talking about relationship. We're talking about the kind of safety that shapes your reactions and even the way you love. Because sometimes what looks like control is actually fear wearing armor. And sometimes what looks like overthinking, people pleasing, or constantly scanning the room is perfection as well. Sharla, after our last conversation, you shared something very interesting. You said that you started seeing control differently. Would you be kind enough to take us into that moment and what that meant for you?
Yes, and thank you, Mike, for the opportunity. I was sitting outside early in the morning, and it was after the recording of the last episode. And I began to ponder something that I had commented on during that time that we were speaking. And it was because I had related my control in a situation and an environment where Nicole's father was the dynamic. And I began to wonder, had I contradicted myself? And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was not a contradiction. It was just simply a misunderstanding. And what I had thought and envisioned as control was actually adaptation. And that adaptation was in the sense of safety and protection, which is what we're talking about today. And I had never had the realization of examining myself and looking within as to how I felt and why I was in that controlling, environment from others, because they were seeing me as being controlling. I was not seeing it for myself because I did not understand what was going on inside in my nervous system.
That's serious stuff. Very powerful. Nicole, when you were going through that similar type of experience from the other side, meaning observing your mom extending what she says was control or what could have been perceived as control or adaptation perhaps, how did that make you feel as a child? How did that dynamic work with you and how did that shape your life?
Well, to be honest, Mike, I never saw my mom as controlling. I never used that word because as a child, I didn't know. She was my mom. And I feel like as a child, in order to cope with the rigidness, I think the rigidness is more a better word for it because she had rules. And if you broke the rule, there were consequences. So I became very much adapting to my environment, scanning, anticipating. So I didn't want to break a rule, so I had to make sure that I anticipated my behavior before I even did anything. So it's a lot of, I believe that's what helped me to survive in the sense of managing my environment, the emotion. I learned how to control my own emotions in a way that would influence the emotions of others. So there was never any peace within me because I was constantly scanning to say, okay, this person looks like they're in a bad mood. Let me just smile.
Sure,
It'll make it
sure.
so much better. But that's where I got the smiling from. That's why I smiled all the time when I was a child, because I learned that if I smiled, it softened the other people. I was able to deal with whatever mood shift or whatever they were going through at the time. And when it came to my mom, I think that was the most frustrating part, is that I didn't feel like I had the freedom to do what I thought was good for me, because if I did something that was good for me, it meant I went outside the box. And if I went outside the box, oh, I get in trouble. So it was kind of I think tension is probably the right word to use. It was a very tense environment and not very relaxing. So my nervous system learned to be safe, I had to be tense.
Got it. So thank you, Nicole, for sharing that with us, because it really is an important component of what we're talking about today. Because both of you are describing something that is not a personality, but it often gets prescribed as if it is a personality defect. And we're not saying that at all. We're just telling it is adaptation that's what's going on right now, because our nervous system is always asking, am I safe? Do I feel like I'm being heard? Am I connected? And when the answer feels uncertain, we certainly create different strategies. And from those strategies, we act as if something is a better way to be than what you were concerned about, like going outside the lines. And I dare say, before we go and hand it over to Sharla here real quickly, Sharla, it occurs to me, not knowing we're going to go down this path today, but it occurs to me that you were maintaining aspects of parental control just like your parents did for you and your brother. I mean, who else taught you how to be a mother, right?
Oh, that's absolutely correct. And I was actually thinking that while you were speaking. And I'll even go back to the very beginning when you mentioned talking about safety and not limiting it to riding a bicycle, crossing a street, the normal things that we learn as a child. That was my extent of knowing safety.
Consciously.
Consciously, yes, exactly, consciously. And even though I had a degree that incorporated science, with my mathematics, I never truly understood the nervous system and took into the account how the body and our nervous system actually is regulatory, in the sense in which, it is. And listening to Nicole speak, I could actually step back in time in my own life and envision myself in almost the situation that she was in. Of course, not identical, because the dynamics, were somewhat different, but the principles are the same. And it was pretty much where you just did not cross the line. And if you crossed that line, then that was not a good day.
Bad things happen. I hear you. I hear you. Nicole, when you hear your mom own up to that, and to have shall I say, a flashback experience 40 years ago, as if it's happening right now in the near moment, where do you go in your mind, Nicole, when you hear your mom talking about 40 years ago when you were a child?
Well, to be honest, it's immense gratitude. Because I can't even imagine as a parent what it must be like to hear the grown up daughter talk about, the aspects that are unpleasing. Because I know my mom tried really hard. She tried really hard to be a good mother. I don't see her as bad. I never saw her as bad. It was more of a frustration because I wanted things to change, but she wasn't willing at the time to listen or to try to change those things. So now that she sees a higher perspective, and she sees how much the trauma or the dysfunction is passed down generation from generation, we can see now how she's not a victim. Well, she was a victim of her own dysfunction as a child that carried on to me, and then unfortunately I passed it down to my children because I didn't even learn about this stuff until later when they were already teenagers. It's unfortunate, but I can say how proud I am of my mom for showing up. Because this is the kind of conversation that needs to be had. It's the conversation beneath the conversation. And I really wish we could have had this when I was younger. It would have helped me tremendously to understand life, to understand the world. The world is already a really tough place to live in for anybody. So someone with a disability like me is 10 times harder. And it would have been really nice to have that. So I'm grateful for it at this time that my mom is showing up, because now that we can build a relationship in a way that gives me peace and I can grow further from this moment.
Exactly. Indeed. So, Nicole, Sharla, it's important that you both understand as I'm sort of walking you through the different processes and procedures that we go through to get you to healing in different ways, shapes, and forms. This is where healing usually starts. For the first time ever, you are both seeing the same perspective from each other's point of view. And if you can agree on the same perspective from different points of view, that is the first step towards learning how to survive in different ways. And this is where healing usually starts. Not blame, it's understanding. Is that making sense to you, Charlotte?
Oh, it's making perfect sense, Mike. And Nicole and I appreciate Nicole. Yes, I have immense gratitude in my heart for you too, that we are able to carry on and have the conversations that we do now and truly begin to understand and know each other, because that is so important in a relationship and making a stable connection. And I did not know, I'm going to say, how to be a mother. When you were born, I was in my 30s. All my friends were having their kids back when they were either in high school or in their 20s. So I was a late mother, but I feel like that was the time that was right for me. Even though in my heart I wanted children so bad. I wanted a family, but I'd never felt like I was ready, if there is a possibility to be ready for
Yeah, it's a good
motherhood.
question
I
too,
didn't
isn't
get
it?
the grounding that I needed when I was growing up.
So absolutely. So we understand that, and we're not here to beat up any of our forefathers and foremothers and everything else. It's just that's a waste of energy, and we don't want to go do it. We were taught what we were taught. We learned what we learned, and we did the best we could, just like everybody did the best they could. But at this point in time, we are trying to turn the page on aspects of ourselves that were not quite as whole as we would like them to be. We were not who we wanted to be. Okay, but how can we get there from that point? So when you start thinking about how this is different, Charla, what changed in you as you started seeing Nicole as a child and as a mother herself currently? What changed when you saw that differently with your newfound awareness and understanding of what the neural system is and the nervous system and all of those different aspects that get us through life?
The change in me came when Nicole exposed me to the work that she was doing. That's really what began the conversations behind the conversation and allowed us to truly get to know each other, because in the past we were close, and we were mother and daughter. We always had that love for each other, but as far as the inner work and being able to grow and learn more about each other so we could grow together. That did not come until Nicole was introduced to Attracting Grace, and she brought me into the program, and I started studying and learning more about the inner self and how so much of what is inside really stabilizes our life. I lived in the external.
Yeah.
I had very little relationship with internal being of Sharla.
I mean, that's serious because you were not quite in that space and you wanted to understand how to do it because you knew at some level something wasn't feeling right, something was not quite there, it was sort of missing, whatever that might have been to you, and you didn't know where to go. And a lot of the information that we teach today didn't exist in your parents' generation, so there was no way they could teach it to you.
And you know, Mike, if I could mention something here
Sure.
too, because the words that you just used, and it was that belonging and missing. I kept feeling all of my life that something was amiss. I could not put my finger on it. I did not know what it was. I could not label it, but I knew that it just wasn't there. I did not have it all together, so to speak. I'm not blaming anyone
Sure.
whatsoever, but it's just something that I did not learn as I grew from childhood to young adult, and of course, then, into adulthood. And I think that's very important for anyone to recognize that there is that missing element, and that missing element is not outside, it's inside.
Not outside, it is inside. And what happens when you get that? What shows up to me is compassion for yourself and compassion for those who didn't have the information either. But you now have it, and now you can modify and change and shift and adjust your life at that point in time. Does compassion fit into that as well for you?
Oh, compassion fits immensely, because I can remember multiple times of how I would continuously criticize myself. I would find fault with the slightest, with just the littlest things, sometimes even just looking into the mirror or something that might have happened, that day within the family, my brother, myself, whatever it may be. I would always point the fingers at me, and I would criticize me, and I would never have any type of compassion. I had external, here again, I'm into that external. I had kindness and compassion galore, but not to Sharla.
Right, got it. Hey, Nicole, what are your thoughts about all this? Is this making sense to you? Are you crossing these bridges, and are you doing the same thing that your mom is doing right now because you now learn how this can be?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'd like to point out too that while my mom could have done things differently as a mother, I could have done things differently as a daughter. And I want to make sure that that's, in the forefront as well, because I made a lot of mistakes. And as someone with a hearing challenge, I've learned through the experience of reversing my hearing loss. So I've gone from 2% hearing to now, I think the highest I've gone up to now is 65, which is exciting. Like, oh my goodness, I can hear things I never heard before. But what comes with that is a learning with the nervous system and learning how to parent myself, which is not something I did as a child. So I found that as a child, I was a very difficult personality. So I was very much intense. I wanted my opinion to be heard. I wanted to be understood. And I remember for the longest time, even through adulthood in my own family with my children and my spouse, I used to tell all the time, "You're not understanding me. I was never feeling heard." So as much as I spoke, which I did speak a lot, I was a very avid talker. So someone that's an overthinker, typically, they speak a lot.
That
But what was ironic is no matter how much I spoke, I still felt that I wasn't heard. So I didn't feel heard. That was one of the things that I would tell people, like, "You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me," which is ironic. But I learned through this work that the reason why I felt that way is because I was not hearing me.
hmm hmm
And the more I get my hearing, the more I'm learning that having your hearing directly correlates to how much you're listening to yourself. So if you're someone that's losing your hearing, for example, it means that you're not listening to yourself as much as you could. So your body is slowly turning the volume down until you won't be able to hear anything at all because you're not hearing what's inside. So listening, we spoke about listening, and I think in episode 1, when my mom and I had that turning point where I came in an angry outburst, and she sat there and she listened to me.
She heard
And
you, I assume, right? She felt heard. Okay.
yeah, that was that was a very interesting time, but it needed to happen. It was one of those one moment deals where it expressed itself and it never came back. Thank goodness. It was one of the just up and out, and I had to stay container. And once that was allowed to leave, I was able to move on and we were able to heal. So there was no holding on to that. There was no resentment. There was no, "I can't believe you did that." None of that. It happened. We learned from it and then we moved on. And so now I understand the importance of listening. So, for example, whenever I approach my mom in a relationship, I'm noticing that there's a dialogue inside of me. And in the past, I would never hear that dialogue. I would just be the dialogue. So it's like I was fused with my mind. I was fused with whatever I was thinking is how it came out. So there was no thought about any of it. Now it's very different because now I can hear what's going on inside. I can hear that voice that could be critical, could be angry, it could be many things. I didn't know how to deal with it in the past, but now that I've learned how to parent myself and then with the work that we're doing and the nervous system regulation, I'm able to show up for my mom in a more compassionate way. Because my mom had the same aspect as well that she's working on. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And I've learned that when you're listening to yourself, life is like a mirror, right? So our relationship is a mirror inside the relationship that you have with yourself. So my outer relationship with my mom is my inner relationship with the mother part of myself. So the more that I can listen to myself and adjust the way that I choose, so now I have a choice. I can choose to express myself in the way that my nervous system wants me to do, or I can say, that doesn't work for us. Let me take a grace reset, which we will learn in the future. But once I took those time to pause, breathe, choose something differently, then I'm able to show up differently. I can tell you that I'm lifetimes away from the person I used to be. Lifetime. And I'm learning how to respond instead of react. And a lot of my reaction from before hurt relationships. I used to hurt my mom. I would hurt my sisters and my brother unintentionally, but it was just the force of emotion that was inside that I didn't know what to do with. So I had to get it out. So in order to get it out, you kind of angry outbursts that are happening. But now I'm able to sit with it. I can sit with it and say, no, that's not how we show up. We're going to show up this way. And that's more of the parenting aspect that I never learned.
Sharla, when you hear Nicole say this, and so where are you on the continuum from who you were when you were young to who you are right now as a grandmother and an elderly woman who has the wherewithal now to do a life that you love even better than before? How has that found its way to you, and how is your experience showing up?
I am growing and I am expanding more than what I had ever expected. And a couple of things that I do want to back up for just a moment with what Nicole was saying. Because of her smiling, because of her ability to hide everything as deeply, as she did, I did not see a lot of what was going on within her because she hid everything behind a smile and she was good at it. But now that I understand that, and I can reflect back and see her as a child and see her today, the smile she has today is a lot different from the smile she had back then. Because now I have the insight to understand that her smile now comes from inside and the deeper feelings and how she's grown. And that's how I feel about myself. Because now I can look at myself in times where I would cut myself down because of something that I feel like was just, I should not have done. It was just a crazy thing at the moment. And I would call myself, we say we're stupid, we're idiot, because we did these things. But now I look at it and I remember her smile. It makes me smile and then I laugh. And I end up finding that laughter overcomes, that those feelings that I have of maybe resentment or not even liking myself, because there's just a lot behind the smile. I'm telling you.
If you think about that in the deepest context that you are both sharing today, I guess I've got the question that might seem large right now. Do you still need the strategy of trying to control everybody or having the perception of control based on what you knew growing up?
No, I do catch myself still in that pattern at times. But the difference now is the fact that I'm aware of it, where before I never had that awareness. So it just continued because that was the normal pattern for my life. I did not know any different. But now that I know the difference, and I have learned the basis of that control and also learned of the pausing, then we're going to get more into the pause because that is so, so important. There is power behind the pause, so everyone can prepare for that. But being able to stop just for that split second and not react and not try to take the control makes a huge difference. So I'm growing. I'm not completely 100% there yet, but I am growing and expanding, and that's what's important.
So what feels like personality is just often protection. It is just protecting our nervous system from things that feel like we are being attacked. Nicole, how about you? Can protection change over time?
Oh, absolutely. Because the more that you do this work and you learn, you start to learn just how safe you really are. You start to learn that there's really no need to protect yourself. You don't need to protect yourself from energy, so to speak, or people that are around you because you're naturally safe. And when you have that perspective, that's what the world shows to you. So whatever is inside is a mirror to your external world. So the more safe you feel inside, that's exactly what exhibits outside. I can tell you in my experiences as a child, I found myself in some pretty what might have been seen as unconventional situations where some harm could have come my way. But I never had any fear. I never had it in my mind that something was going to happen, and nothing did happen. I just walked right through it. It's almost like you're walking through the fire because you're not holding that fear that something's going to happen. And when you hold that fear, well, that's when the universe is going to show you, okay, so then it showed you. And then that's what makes the cycle happen and repeat because you're holding the fear, it gets validated, which makes you fear it even more. That gets validated, and so on and so forth. So when you start to learn just how safe you really are, that cycle stops and it doesn't repeat itself.
Good deal. Last word, Sharla. Do you have anything you want to share with us based on what we talked about today with our nervous system and some of the aspects of control that you might have experienced or even initiated in a previous life?
I think maybe just to stop and question yourself. Just look at, where did I learn this? Where did I hear this? Why did I grab it so strongly, so to speak, that it became a stronghold in my life? That stopping, pausing, and just really wondering, where it all began, because you can change.
Indeed. Thank you, ladies. Good to visit with you again this week on the Unfiltered Butterfly podcast. We'll see you all again next week. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.